I'm going to start over. Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist and Hank Goldberg here in Las Vegas. It's a big week ahead of us, Hank. We got the WNBA Aces looking pretty good, but the big story, of course, is the opening tomorrow of the NBA playoffs between Golden State Warriors visiting Toronto Raptors, who have the home court advantage. And pretty excited about that game and that series.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see who can shake off the rust of a few days off. Although, if you look it up, the Golden State has a sensational record in the first game of playoffs, and I think they've only had one loss over the last few years.
Yeah, they are strong. There's another pattern in the playoffs this year that the first game has been going under, and the money has been coming in on the under. It was 215.5. It's down to 213.5 now, and that's where the sharps have been putting their money on the under.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with that. You don't know, what the layoff is going to do and how it's going to affect either side. And remember, the game is in Toronto because Toronto had the better record over the season, and so they get the home field or home court advantage.
Yeah, I don't put much stock in regular season stuff, but it does help to have the screaming fans and the crowd there and the Jurassic Park and all that. It helps motivate, but I think everybody's motivated when it gets to the finals. And Golden State isn't new to this, and this is like 5 years in a row that they've been there. And they have the experience, they have the pedigree. Of course, Kawhi Leonard is playing as good as anybody, and people are comparing him to the best players out there, and the way he's been playing, I can't blame him.
Well, we'll see what happens if he goes up against Draymond, who's been playing great as well as he's ever played, and he's got himself and his temperament under control, and that'll be fun to watch.
The other night we talked about the big matchup between DeGrom and Kershaw, and the total on that game was 6.5, and baseball is so different now when pitchers are going limited number of innings and you bring in relievers that just don't shut the door off that often. It's a whole different game. And then in baseball, it was news last night that the smallest crowd ever for Tampa Bay showed up at the game, about 5,000 fans. This seems to be going across the NBA, or not the NBA, but the Major League Baseball, that things like this are happening, and the crowds are smaller. Well,
the small crowds in Florida are always small as they get closer to the summer and people leave town. They get out of South Florida during the warm weather months, and they go to the mountains, and so the available public is reduced significantly. And what's left behind is the senior. The part-time residents are gone, and the seniors are left behind, and so you'll find the attendance dropping in both Florida markets. Well, of course, you can't get any lower in Miami.
They're not very good, but they've had a couple of. They're 18-34, which is almost a 2-to-1 ratio, and they're going up against San Francisco's pitching Bumgarner, and they're coming in with Lopez. Lopez is pretty good, and they come up with some games every once in a while that look. I give them a chance in today's game. Not a great team by any stretch, but San Francisco isn't very good either. That should be a good pitching matchup.
I thought one of the great matchups of the week was Minnesota-Milwaukee. Two teams that have been pretty good, and Houston, the Houston series. I'll tell you, the team that's really hot has been Oakland. and they're not cooling off any.
No, they're not. They got a day game today against the Los Angeles Angels. They are red hot. What's 11 or 12 straight games now? Something like that?
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
That's the
Came from
longest.
behind yesterday, and they've been finding all kinds of ways to win.
Yeah, it's magic right now for them. And of course, the Angels are a disappointment on the year. But we got, and Snell goes today for Tampa. I don't know if Snell's ever 100% came back to form after his injury, but he's still pretty darn good. And maybe the fans will show up today to see him pitch. Cy Young Award winner last year in the American League, and still doing very well. If he rounds into shape off of that injury, which he seems to be, so. But the big game, the New York Yankees have been incredible. You keep talking about them as being, and they got Paxton coming back off an injury. He's a good left-hander. Excuse me. But he's going up against San Diego. The Padres with Paddock. This kid's pretty good. ERA 172. WHIP is .73, which is about as low as you can get. And this is, last night they beat him. I think Paddock and San Diego could do, might be worth a take here. Paxton coming off the injury may not be as sharp.
Well, the Yankees are, even yesterday they lost, but they're still hitting the ball, and they've been a tough out. But that pennant race is going to be three ways, I think, the whole way, between the Yankees, Tampa Bay, and the Red Sox, who are coming on lately. And the Red Sox are getting better pitching, and the Red Sox have a strong lineup, and they were going to come around eventually, and they have. So, and you got a lot of weather considerations right now. A lot of bad weather in the Midwest, tornado warnings all over the place. You pointed out in our last show about wind factors.
Yes, these winds are excessive at times. I mean, the other day they had a big drop in one game because of the wind blowing in at 18 miles an hour, which is very high. But like Ohio, specifically the state of Ohio, got slammed with tornadoes yesterday. This tornado thing is absolutely incredible. The poor people that have to live through that is just amazing, unbelievable. But the weather is extreme, and it's affecting baseball games. And wind is a big factor when you're talking about maybe not so much the wins and losses, but the totals, overs and unders. It's pretty strong stuff. So keeping track of the wind is something that I do first thing in the morning to know. That's the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game today. It's an early start, and that looks like an overplay to me because of the wind. But that's already in the line now because it's been out there for a couple hours. But I bet it early, about 5 a.m. When I got up. But
meanwhile, the Phillies have been pretty hot.
Yeah, they're playing St. Louis today. They got a pretty good 32-22. That's a pretty good record. And St. Louis is a little under 500. Once Philadelphia is a 160 favorite in that game. We're getting into the summer now, and hopefully the weather will calm down a little bit, and we'll get rid of these tornadoes and start to get some good weather on these games. Anything else going on with in the world of racing, horse racing?
No, next week is the Belmont, and Baffert is not going to run his horse Game Winner. He's going to hold him off until the Travers, he says.
All right.
So he was a big factor in that race. So you've got two horses right now who are Tacitus, who is going to be about 6 or 7 to 5, and the winner of the Preakness, who was probably going to be 8 to 5 in a race, and after that, a bunch of horses. So, the experts are looking at a 2-horse race. Tacitus, of course, is the horse who figures to run well, going a 1.5-mile distance. This is a distance that horses will only run probably once in their lives, 1.5 miles. Thoroughbreds, dirt runners. 1.5 miles is usually a race distance that's reserved for grass, and it's a big challenge. And there are a lot of horses that are in here who are question marks, who are kind of freshened for this race. And, really, the summer racing season has, races like the big race of Monmouth, the Travers, which will be coming up in August. But this has been kind of a disappointing 3-year-old season. No Triple Crown on the line. But it's next Saturday, a week from Saturday. And there's a lot of, they put off a lot of stakes races to get a big stakes card that day. The Metropolitan Mile will be contested that day. It used to be a couple of weeks before the Belmont. And so it'll be a terrific card. But interest in the Belmont probably going to be minimum this year. But it's still the Belmont. It's still a big deal in New York.
Of course it is. Yeah, racing fans will be there. They'll show up. I'll watch. They started the Stanley Cup final, and that was a pretty good game for Boston. They got down 2 goals in the first period, and then they shut down. Shut down St. Louis and ran up a 4-2 victory over them, and I really think Boston is going to be too much for them. And, all the experts were saying, well, Boston in 6. I'm not sure it'll go that far. But, of course, Boston was home. And maybe when they get on the St. Louis ice, it'll be a different story. But it was a very physical game. And St. Louis in that first game rang up 4 penalties. And so they were shorthanded, and Boston cashed in on 2 of them. So, and Boston's just good. They're very well coached, and they were very, very in the last 2 periods. The game was played on the St. Louis end of the ice predominantly, and they probably wore St. Louis down. Yeah, that's a good analysis of that game. I think Boston is too much for them as well. Pretty interesting week. We'll come back Friday. We'll do some more updates on this. We'll have a game under our belt in the NBA. We'll actually have seen the Las Vegas Aces play another game, which they were very impressive in their first game. That's a WNBA, which, by the way, if you like money, it's an easier sport to beat sometimes than the NBA itself. So anyway, Hank, thank you for today. We'll talk again on Friday. Thank you.
Are you going to lay the big price on Golden State?
I don't really play futures that much, but I think Golden State should be a bigger price than they are. Honestly, I think that you can get Golden State under 3-1. It's actually a bargain. They have the better team. They got the experience. They got the coaching. Kawhi is a great player, but when you look at the 5 starters versus the 5 starters, and then the experience factor, it's going to be hard for Toronto to beat this team 4 games out of 7. So I think Golden State's the right side. I am playing them. I'm not a futures player, but I have to. That price is too cheap.
If you think Toronto can win a game, Golden State you can get 3-1 on Golden State to win in 5. It's kind of an interesting prop.
That's pretty a good point. Probably a good idea to do that. If I don't think Toronto's going to beat them very much. But the thing is, if they beat them once, I think that would be about normal for me to see this team winning once. Twice is the stretch. I don't think this series goes to 7. So I think Golden State wins it in 5 or 6, but I don't think they'll sweep them, though. I think that Toronto will squeeze out one win. So I think your tip there is right. Maybe bet them in 5.
You get a nice price.
You do. Absolutely, Hank. Thank you.
All right, Jim. Have a good day.
You too, buddy.
Good luck in the poker tournament.
Thank you. I play tomorrow, 11 o'clock. It's a World Series of Poker. It's the Big 50. It's their 50th anniversary. I think there might be, 15 to 20,000 players over the 4 starting days. $1 million first prize. Prize pool should be somewhere around $5 million. But thank you. I appreciate it.
Come a long way from when they had the small group opinions.
Yeah, and they used to vote for who the best player was. Not so much anymore.
Yeah, well, I remember the first year when they let Amarillo Slim win because all the IRS guys were standing around waiting to see who they were going to tax. The other guys lay down.
Oh, that's a riot. That's a great story. Thanks, Hank.
Okay, be well.
Bye-bye.